It's the Brad and John Show.
It is the Brad and John Show. This is segment B block, whatever you want to call it. And today's date is March 3rd. This is the first day of March as far as our show is concerned. It's obviously not the first day as far as the calendar is concerned, but Saturday and Sunday were March 1st and 2nd, so today's the 3rd. John, an update on something, okay? I didn't bring this up on Friday. I should have. It was on my list, and I never got around to it. An update, and this is, I think we're going to start naming things the John Combest eye roll segment, okay, where John rolls his eyes and goes, oh my God, here he goes again.
That's usually from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m., right?
On Thursday afternoon, I was driving east on 70, coming out of St. Charles County. I was in that stretch between the bridge and the Earth City Expressway. Actually, which is sort of confusing, it's between the Earth City Expressway. If you go to the north, if you go to the south, it's the Maryland Heights Expressway. And as I was driving east on 70, I noticed a fire in the parking lot of one of the buildings to the south there in Riverport, okay? And it was...
What would be a course of action if you saw a fire, Brad? What would you do if you saw a fire?
Immediately, I grabbed my phone and I dialed 911. And, I mean, at this point, it was like the grass and the landscape that was on fire. But at this point, it was a pretty good fire. There was smoke drifting. Matter of fact, as I drove across it, the smoke was sort of drifting that way. And you could smell it as you drove through it. And I dialed 911. The nice dispatcher, I gave her the information where it was at, location, the whole bit. And the interesting thing was that on Friday afternoon, the fire chief, I believe, of the Pattonville Fire District called me personally and said, Brad, we want to thank you for your 911 call. That could have been the Palisades fire. That could have wiped out all of the Riverport. All of Riverport would have been. And the worst part of it is Dave and Buster's would have burnt down. Brad, because of you, because of your heads up and your early warning call to 911, because of the fact that, and he said this, I don't know if this is true or not, he said they had geolocated you by your phone and they had seen that you also drove by and did nothing. And the guy says...
You being John Combest, you being me, right?
Yes, meaning you.
Yeah, and I was out, I was on 70 on Saturday. They're right about that.
And he said, now, we noticed that your co-host of your show did not call us, but you did. Thank you so much, Brad. Okay, so that's...
And, in my defense, as I told the gentleman from Pattonville, I told him that I thought it was a promotional event from a dispensary. I thought they had an outdoor smoking event, which is pretty common, It doesn't matter if you're at Walmart or if you're Dave & Buster's. Pretty much anywhere you go now, there's outdoor smoking events. I just thought everybody was token up.
No. Okay. Issue number 2. Are you ready for this?
I am.
For the 4th time in 12 months, I got pulled over by the St. Charles County Police Saturday night.
Oh, no, Brad. Okay, give us the context here. And was it because of something that says a series of the same letters across a piece of metal?
Yes, it was my license plate once again.
Okay.
It was my license plate once again. And what's interesting about this is I'm going like, what is going on with this? Okay, I have 3 different personalized license plates, and each one of them has the same letter repeated a number of times. One of them is the same letters repeated 4 times. One of them, the same letters repeated 5 times. One of them, the letter is repeated 6 times, okay? This was the 5th time. This was the time of the vehicle I'm driving had 5 of the same letter on it. And what happens is, I know for a fact, because the one guy admitted to me, not this guy that pulled me over Saturday night, they have their computer sitting right there. It's so easy to run my license number because all they do is hit the key on the computer, dunk, 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 enter, up pops my information. The interesting part of this is that they put in the wrong number of these letters, and it shows up as my other car.
That's going to happen, right?
Yes, it shows up as my other car, and he pulls me over, and he says, sir, and, once again, thank you, my son, Brett. I did it perfectly. I pulled over to the side.
What are the instructions? Tell everybody who hasn't heard this before, Brad.
Hands on the steering wheel, 10 and 2. Keys out of the ignition, engine off, keys on the dashboard, hands 10 and 2, looking straight forward. Now, this guy pulled a little bit of switcheroo on me, and which sort of surprised me a little bit. Instead of coming to the passenger's window, or the driver's side window, he came to the passenger side window, and my passenger side window doesn't work too well on this car. It's a power window, but it goes like real slow down. So he says to me, good evening, sir. And I said, good evening to you. And I said, once again, I said, officer, I am carrying a weapon. It's at my 3 o'clock. And he says, thank you for informing that. He says, I want to inform you that this is not the proper car for this license plate. And I said to him, and he says to me, this comes back as, and I won't give the car because I don't want to give away what I'm driving because people might laugh. And I said, that's my other car. And he says, what do you mean it's your other car? And I told him, I said, I have 3 personalized plates that are 4 of the same letter, 5 of the same letter, and 6 of the same letter. You typed in a 6th letter instead of 5. If you go back to your car and type in 5, you will see that this is the proper registered car for that license plate. And he looks at me and he says, okay, have a good night, be careful. And he just walked back to his squad car. Didn't ask me for my driver's license, didn't ask me for insurance, anything. I'm going like, okay, whatever. So
that's a reasonable guy. That's a nice approach.
Right. He was nice about it, But see, what's interesting about it is and I know from working for a police department, my son stresses this, that if you are in their mode of doing the perfect traffic stop, hands on the steering wheel, engine off, keys on the dashboard, informing them you are a carrier of a concealed weapon, they are instantly put into a different mode of, this is what my son said, because he worked with a guy, that was what he did. He helped teach these classes a guy who was a police officer and actually had a very high ranking as far as he used to be in the Army, and he actually taught he taught advanced tactics. He was an AR-15 guy, and he taught out at the FBI shooting range out there in Weldon Spring, which my son helped with. So anyway, this is one of the things they would teach in their concealed carry class. And he would say, as a police officer, with you do these things, that puts us at ease. And a lot of times, it's the difference between you getting a ticket and not getting a ticket. Now, obviously, I wasn't speeding or anything like that. And the one guy, I had one woman who pulled me over. I think this was like 3 pullovers where she was going to give me a ticket. And I said to her, ma'am, why would you give me a ticket? Because of the fact that if I go to court and fight this, I'm going to win because of the fact that I can prove exactly what happened. And then she says, well, maybe I won't give you a ticket. Okay, whatever. So anyway.
If you weren't speeding, Brad, so how were you flagged and why did he pull you over? Did he just randomly
they come up,
see your license plate and enter it, or what happened?
Look, I can tell you, it's to the point where I can tell you almost exactly what happens. I'm driving along and they get behind me. Just sort of random luck. They get behind me. And because a lot of these guys, as they're driving, they're running your license plate. They're looking for, and apparently, who knows? My car's dirty. Maybe it's to the point where.
I was going to say, would it maybe have to do with the condition of your car, that he would think, okay, maybe this guy's carrying meth or something like that?
Well, if I would have been in a Ledoux, an old dirty car that has 300,000 miles on it, I would have been, matter of fact, back in the day, in Ledoux they used to call it checking for visas. You know what I mean by that?
Oh yeah, like you're in an area where you should not be.
Right, you fit the profile of someone who doesn't belong in that area. I don't know. He just, once again, and I think it's part of it. It's easy because of the fact that they can literally run my, because thinking about it, if it's like your typical license number X35652, if you're driving along, it's not that easy to put that license number. If you can't do it with 2 hands because you got to drive with 1 hand. But if you've got the same letter that repeats numerous times, it's super easy to go dunk, 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 enter, bonk, up it comes on the screen.
Yeah, he probably said, what kind of a eccentric character has the same letter 5 times as a license plate?
I take this as a compliment.
It is a compliment.
Eccentric
but
character.
I'd be curious if I was a police officer.
Well, so that's my stupid thing. Okay, and and once again, does it bother me? I actually think this is funny. In the last 10 years, if I were to keep track of this, I think I've probably been pulled over at least 20 times. And in the last 10 years, I have never, ever, ever gotten a ticket. Never.
Nice.
It's the point where it's like It's always some crazy thing, one time, I take that back. Well, no, I didn't get a ticket for that. One of my brake lights was out. Okay, and the one police officer, that was another woman, and she says your left brake light, you're missing. I have 2 brake lights back there. She says one of your brake lights is out. I said thank you so much. And the crazy thing about it wasn't that car just passed inspection like a couple weeks ago. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, did they miss that in the inspection, or did it just go out since it got inspected? Who knows? Anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. It's sort of stupid stuff, but I find it interesting. And, and once again, the nice thing about this is, I say it once again too many times, the nice thing about this is that there was a time back in the COVID days when you almost had to have like a axe with blood dripping off it on the trunk of your car for them to pull you over, because back in the COVID days they never pulled anybody over. Remember I told you that story about, I heard the guy who was head of the Minnesota, I think the Minnesota Highway Patrol, and he talked about the fact that during the COVID, the number of traffic stops they had in excess of 100 miles an hour had quadrupled, because
because you can get away with it.
Right, everyone was driving around on the interstate because there was nobody on the interstates, because everybody was stuck at home and they were driving 120, 130 miles an hour. Okay, so that's my stupid story. Okay, now we can't go any further without talking about the Zelenskyy and the White House. John, I want to know your opinion of that.
I thought it was wonderful television. I thought it was better than anything Trump ever did on The Apprentice. And to be fair, I watched a 12-minute segment that CNN has posted, of all people. But I watched it on YouTube, and I didn't watch the whole thing. And I guess the whole thing is about 50 minutes long. So I didn't get the whole context, but from what I saw, it was just wonderful. And I mean, obviously, I loved it. I'm a Trump partisan. What did you think about it?
Wonderful from the respect that he essentially sort of was disrespectful to a national leader, or
yeah. Like, and put a man who's coming in with his hand out, coming to the United States, hat in hand, to put him in his place and tell him that he needs to be more grateful. I love that.
Well, the interesting part of it that I was able to pick up on this is that they were supposed to sign the agreement where the United States is either going to get some like sweetheart deal for the mineral rights in Ukraine, or some kind of a deal like that, where they're going to end up partially being repaid back for some of the money we've gave them to essentially fight off the Russians. But the interesting part of that was that what I read was that Zelenskyy had already told him ahead of time, you know what, I know you think I'm going to sign this agreement, but I'm not. So that was why Trump was sort of in a foul mood, because he thought he had this deal negotiated where Zelenskyy is going to show up in the White House and they're going to, ceremoniously sign this agreement. And Zelenskyy had given him a heads up saying, no, sorry, not going to do that. Did you ever hear that part of the story?
No, I didn't hear that at all.
Well, that's what I heard, and I don't know, and I read that 2 different places, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, that's sort of interesting, and maybe that was Trump essentially saying, okay, dude, you think you're going to waltz into my place and you're going to make it look like, yeah, we're going to let the United States and sign this agreement, we're going to get some of our money back, and Elon Musk is going to be happy. It's like the Doge thing. We're gonna find where all money goes. We're going to get it back, and he didn't do it. I don't know, but see. The interesting part of this is that Trump is the master negotiator. Now, after that happened, Zelenskyy goes to London, and he holds up with the London Prime Minister. And then yesterday, wasn't he like in all sorts of meetings with the French Prime Minister or whatever
other
it is?
European leaders.
Right.
At least the headlines I saw today were, it was the juxtaposition between how he was treated by Trump versus how he was embraced by European leaders.
Exactly. But think about this for a minute. One of the things that Trump has said for a long time is, Europe, this is on your continent. We're across the ocean. You're right next to this. Ukraine is technically part of Europe. It's not Asia. It's technically part of Europe. Isn't this your responsibility? Because remember, in Trump's first go-around, he chastised all the members of NATO because they were not ponying up the amount of money they had agreed to. 2% of GDP or something like that. So by doing this, didn't he sort of set up the European leaders essentially saying, oh, that Trump was so nasty to you. We're going to take care of you, Mr. Zelensky. We're going to do more for you. We're going to help you out. Isn't that sort of like a backhanded way of Trump getting the Europeans to help out Zelensky and the Ukrainians more?
Yeah, I think, I hadn't thought of it that way, Brad. But I think that's what Trump supporters would call, years ago, they used to refer to 3D chess and 4D chess and like thinking way far ahead. The way you position it, yeah, that's a really good point. If these European leaders are so supportive of him, why don't they do more?
Right. And to the point where they're going to come off looking good on the world stage by, look at how poorly he was treated, because there's all these pictures of him shaking hands, Saturday with the head of England, and then him in the meeting with all these other heads of state on Sunday, and they were just, gather around him, and they were like, oh, bro, we got your back, that kind of a thing,
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, that's just my read on it. But I think the funniest part of it was near the end, Trump says, what to the reporters? What is this Trump something? Or his quote was something like, "Oh, wow, that was great TV, wasn't it?" Or something.
Yeah,
like that.
yeah. I mean, he knows great TV, doesn't he?
And someone that I know was like, I said, this is the guy, what this guy does. And they were like, well, he's never done like this before. And I pulled up my phone and I said, let me show you this. And I was in a room with a couple other people. And I said, let me show you Trump at one of the wrestling matches, and you probably know this quite well, where he body slammed Vince McMahon. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it was a hair versus hair match. Yeah, he's had a number of high profile things.
Right.
Like they're stunts.
Right, it was a stunt.
And they get people talking, yeah.
Right, and people are going like, and by the way, if you've watched that video, I guess Vince McMahon is pretty good at doing the fake moves, but Trump literally got him on his back. You know what I'm talking about? You know.
Yeah. I mean, Vince grew up in the business, and even though he wasn't really a worker, like he can take what's called a bump. Like he knows how to jump up on a leg so that all Trump has to do is flip him over.
Right. That's what Trump did. Trump essentially, knocked him backwards onto his back, and Trump fell on top of him. And I'm going like, okay, look at that. Okay, put that next to the Zelensky press conference, and then you get it. Then you get it. You totally understand it. At least I do. Maybe that's because I'm weird and I don't really understand things, but that's a whole nother story. Okay, we have to take a break, and we have to move along to C Block.